to continue where we left off regarding the mind. So what do we say? Well, we gave the examples of the mind being the animal that needs to be trained, that you're paired with. We explained or described where to look for it, which was most accurately described as in between the internal sense of the body, perception, and what's being felt. I think you refer to the space.
The space between those,
space
when
between,
you have to see the two.
Yeah. So obviously I think it can lead people to think like they're going to see something in that space in between. The mind will just be there, but no, the space in between is the mind. So that's as closely as you can define it.
That really helped me actually, or I found it very good, because that was one of the issues I've had with this word, the mind. That at least, especially because for a very long time I was kind of thinking of it as a separate entity, like that endures, almost like a kind of a projection, or it's almost like another word for self, basically, that you just don't want to use the word self, so you say mind.
It's all bundled together.
But so this.
Yeah, so it's like, so you're not going to see a separate phenomenon within that space. Clarifying that space means clarifying the mind. So that space in between is what the animal is. So we talk about taming the animal means taming the space in between. So is that space in between, is it closer than the body internally in feeling, or is it farther? So there's a sense of internal body, physicality, right here, being felt. There's a sense of feeling on that kind of mental counterpart. Simultaneous presence of the two reveals you the space in between peripherally. So from where you are at, is that space closer or farther from these things that determine it? Perception and feeling, basically. So from the point of view of establishing the correct mindfulness of neither here nor yonder, I there, I in between, which is the closest, which is the...
Does the space in between feel closer or farther than those things?
They define the space in between, yes.
Between.
Exactly.
I'd say closer.
Why? What kind of, what did you say? Would you say that?
Because you have to see those things for, like, it's on account of seeing those things that you can find the space in between, which is sort of, underneath.
Not as far
from them. And that's what makes you, like, that's why you need to see those things first in order to, like, discern
in between. Yeah.
Otherwise it would be the other way around.
So it's in between the distance you have to basically attend. So it's always going to be closer. And that's why it's... I mean, I was saying that before. It's so close. That's the sole reason for being overlooked.
Exactly.
You just can't see it.
Exactly.
Because it's just like literally like a lens in front of your eye that you have no reference for. And you just see the stuff through the lens. So it's like nothing that points, there's actually a lens there, but you don't see that. You couldn't.
Yeah, when you said, is it closer or further than your point of view, then it becomes kind of clear.
Yeah.
Of course.
From the point of view.
Closer to the point of view.
Exactly, where from which you would be attending, from which you would be sort of from the mano, if you want to be technical. So and the reason why I'm asking that is because, well, see, that's why it's kind of ironically the closest, yet the farthest because of that.
Yeah.
Because you just have no means for seeing that in between. Thus, the closest thing is utterly invisible. So that's why we go far and wide, due to the pressures of that closest thing, because you don't really know where it comes from. So you're just seeking satisfaction, acting out here and there in regard to this, in regard to that, because this is just invisible.
This is why I was kind of chuckling to myself, because I was thinking like it's further away in the sense that I don't have any kind of concrete thing to even be talking about with this.
Well, I think that's in order to be able to talk about it and see it, you need to start redefining your definition of what concrete is. I think one of the reasons people won't see it is because they expect, or they kind of imply, that the only real things that are seen have to have a certain level of concreteness to them. But then everything that's less concrete you just would overlook.
It's similar to how, like, most people don't even see thoughts as real.
Exactly, it's exactly the same principle there. Feelings as well, moods, real as such, that's what I keep saying. So space in between is real as such, factually. It's not an abstraction. I mean, it will be if you don't know it's real as such, and if the mind is not developed to see it real as such, that attitude, the view behind it. So you're just going to be overlooking it. So that animal, that space, let's put it broadly, between your body and the feeling felt simultaneously. When I say body, I don't mean sensations. I don't mean external watching of your body or internally following your sensations. I just mean the sense of the body as a whole, whatever the image you might associate with it, and the feeling. So the space in between the two, that animal, well, what does that animal see? Can it see everything you see? Does it have access to the five senses?
Is it only perception, in the sense that there's perceptions of craving and there are perceptions of non-craving? So,
well, you could say those are the only things it's capable of, trained, untrained. But what I'm asking is, does it see everything you see as well? Is it like your companion with whom you together watch the world and make decisions in regard to it? Or is there a different relationship between you and the world and animal and you?
So, if I were to describe the relationship between me and the world, then it's possible for me to discern that I am perceiving, my senses perceiving the world.
It's possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
But for the animal, it is only in relationship with perception.
What do you mean? With perception?
So obviously, what I just described is a perception. So the discernment that I'm perceiving, the senses perceiving.
Well, see, that could easily be just a view you're telling to yourself. You don't necessarily think, oh, I'm seeing my senses seeing this. You just see things. And generally that's your relationship with the world. From here to yonder. So animal being neither here nor yonder, does it see here and yonder? Does it see also these sense objects that you go after? Or it sees something entirely different? You trapped a wild dog. You are now fenced off with it together. What are you looking at? What is the dog looking at? Well, there's a hint. So, if your body language, i.e. physical actions, verbal language, i.e. verbal actions, mental language, i.e. mental actions, if that is the sole factor that either agitates or calms the wild dog, what does the dog see? What is it looking at?
It's looking at you.
That's all it can see. The space in between is not pointed towards what you're looking past it. Oh, look at this sight sound, look. All it sees is you. Nothing else. That's why your actions matter, even if you don't think they do. They might not matter towards anything else, but they matter to this big black dog that's staring. That all it sees is you, because you're the only one trapped with it there. There's nothing else for it. Can't see past the fence. You can.
And because of always looking, like, because you're used to looking past it, past the fence,
You ignore the
you
dog's
ignore
location.
the dog, and that's why you would be trying to deal with those things past the fence.
Yeah.
For the sake of.
But all the mind can see is you.
Yeah.
And that's the whole mirror simile to Rahula that the Buddha gave. Like, what can mirror see if it's like in front of you? Only you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sole thing that's going to be reflected there. So that's why the body language matters, the verbal language matters. Not because some psychologizing factor or possible outcome or something like that. No, it's because this type of body language means this for the animal that can only see you and stares at you. So that space in between does not really see here nor yonder, doesn't even know those things exist. All it sees is what you do. And it doesn't see why you're doing it. That's the important part. Dog does not know. That big wild dog doesn't know why, doesn't care why. Mm-hmm. Oh, he's waving his arm because, no, it doesn't matter. This type of body language aggravates it. The other type of body language calms it down. It doesn't care why. And that becomes your new why. In other words, well, I won't do this body language. Why? Well, because the wild dog is getting agitated and I'm the only one close with it. I shall do this body language. Oh, but why? Look, everybody else is doing this. Well, not everybody else is close with this wild dog. They have their own and they're going to pay the price if they don't tame it.
So your mental actions.
The same principle. But obviously, the coarsest is the physical things that you do or abstain from doing. The verbal things that you say or abstain from saying. And then yes, the mental things that you choose to intentionally revolve around or abstain from doing so. Yes, the possibilities remain there for either of those, but by not giving in to them, you send a message to the dog. Not by not having them there as a possibility. That's never an issue. The issue is, well, what do I do on account of this?
It's like why, similar principle, like why you could, like somebody could abandon the defilements out of faith just by, like, without, you didn't need to, like, if you stick to that behavior, like,
if you stick to that behavior or unbehavior of establishing virtue, you would be defining the space in between, even if you don't necessarily think in any more detail. Mm-hmm. That's being established in virtue, basically. And then if you continue in reference to the space in between, in reference to citta, in reference to the wild animal, continue avoiding unsuitable sight, sound, smell, taste, touches that would make you act unsuitably, the animal will calm down. So that's how you protect your senses. Not because of you. Oh, I can handle it. Yeah, you probably can. That's not the issue. But you being exposed to those sight, sound, smell, taste, touches of the unsuitable kind sends a message to the animal. So when you are seeing those things, animal sees you seeing those things. And whether you like it or not, you look a certain way for that animal, let's say it like that. So that's why those sights are always unsuitable, even if you can handle them, because you will look the certain way. And that way would be agitating the animal. Generally, only an arahant has a fully tamed, friendly dog that cannot bite him under any circumstances, even if the highway robbers are chopping his limbs off. He would not send the wrong message to that dog. Mm-hmm. And that's really what anxiety is. Just even colloquially. Mm-hmm. Well, sorry, finish. What was that?
Well, just like knowing that at any moment. Like
yes. Well, not knowing. Not necessarily knowing. But feeling the proximity of the dog that can go either way.
Yeah, at any time.
At any time, on account of anything. So that's why the distractions, entertainment, anything that people do that's rooted in the intention to distract themselves, it's basically just trying to add things in between you and the dog. So, again, it can't happen. That space cannot increase between you and the dog. Nothing can be placed in between, but you can just believe that now there's something between, so the dog is not seeing me.
But you're also not seeing the dog, like by giving importance to.
Sure, yeah, you kind of forget about it. Yeah. But deep down, that is the sole reason for you needing that distraction. So you're always carrying it with you. And that's again in the solitude. Not even like solitude, more like non-entertainment, really. I think that's like, people talk about solitude. Lay people want to practice 5 precepts, 8 precepts in solitude, but I can't get into solitude because, I have no means of it, finding a secluded place. You'll be closer to solitude by giving up entertainment than by going into physical solitude on your own. So giving up things that you do to distract yourself from yourself, and you're going to have perfect solitude, or more than suitable, more than sufficient solitude. So when, it says that solitude is a prerequisite to see the signs of your mind, i.e. to see the space in between, you could translate that as non-entertainment, non-distraction of the sufficient kind is the prerequisite to see in between, to see. And that's why you had householders back in the day, Sotapannas, who did see their mind. Sure, they were there with the Buddha talking and he guided them, but still. But of course, if you can get into solitude, meaning no access to distracting things, it will lead in the same direction. But if you can't get into solitude, but you could still exercise your restraint and not give in to the distracting thing, and that will be your solitude. And that's why I did hear people, I remember in the past saying like, although it doesn't feel like a big deal, the little entertainments, I don't know, there's some music, okay, maybe music is a bit too coarse, but I don't know. Read the news. Yeah, read the news. Just checking the news. It's not a big deal. I'm not spending 2 hours watching a movie or something. I just read the news and stuff. Just giving up those little things starts filling them with a sense of panic. Just giving up this little, touching base here and there with these little familiarities starts giving you the anxiety and, but I need to do it. Solitude. That's your solitude there and then that you're running away from. And you can be surrounded with your whole crowded, noisy family, shouting, screaming. But when it comes to your choice, if you're not choosing the distraction for the sake of distracting yourself, for the sake of magically believing that this can be placed between me and the wild animal that's constantly, that just lives for looking at me. That's all it can see, that's all it has. Then you'll be alone, even in such crowded environment.
It's common for people to think that, like, if they live in a crowded environment,
they can't
it's like no point.
Yeah,
really,
no point even trying. Yeah, exactly.
In restraining.
But no, the whole point of physical
yeah.
seclusion is to establish you in an environment of non-little distractions that are done for the sake of blurring the space between you and the mind. And see, that's exactly why people would feel like, rest, relax, remove the tension when they engage with distracting activities, which are actually quite tiring. They're not relaxing by any means, but they're not as tiring as the knowledge of the wild dog staring at you at your every move. So it's like, I can't hide from this. So let me engage in these, well, as I said, activities that obviously imply a certain magical belief that you are now invisible because you stop thinking about it. You know, a kid covers its eyes when something scares it. So by covering my eyes, there is no more danger. Well, that's pretty much exactly the same thing you're still doing when you engage with distraction. Oh, I forget about it, thus it's not there anymore. Yet it remains as close and even more agitated now. So that's why that would feel relaxing, because you feel like you're not being watched. And that's why the delusion is the worst and the hardest to get rid of. So you factually feel like you're not being watched, while you're actually still being watched and sending a very wrong message. And it's not, I mean, we spoke about it, I think, before, in Saunadeepa. It's not like, yeah, okay, I gotta abandon everything, mustn't look at anything. No. Those intentions are probably not even that many during the day. It's not like every second you're choosing a distraction. But when you do, you know it. And that's when you do it. And that's when you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah, you get distracted by this, by that, but none of that was fully intentional. So, of course, it's not the most optimal, but it's nowhere near as bad as if, oh, no, I'm choosing this now because the panic is setting in. Because I really need to read the news and listen and go and see these people and go watch this or go talk about this and so on. And that's pretty much the anxiety. When even an ignorant anxiety is when the circumstances would have, showed you that that animal is as close as it ever was, that it's still unpredictable, you still cannot trust it, that it won't bite you, you're not sure. How would you feel if you just suddenly turn around and there is a big, massive dog, wild, next to your face? It might lick my face, it might be a friendly one, but it might not. So imagine how you would feel. You would feel exactly how you feel anytime when you're anxious. It's like, oh, this can go either way. But see, for those who don't even see the mind, they feel it. Because the animal is there, the mind is felt.
And there's an extra layer to it on account of like not even knowing where
that's
that
why it's even
comes
worse.
from.
Oh, yeah,
it's like
of
everything
course.
and nothing and just... Yeah.
That complete panic then sets in, yeah. But the point is, no, I was just going to say, like, you can say, like, oh yes, so you don't know how things will turn out, so you're anxious. But you're not really anxious because of that. There is another layer in between that's more direct cause for your anxiousness, and that's that mind that you don't trust, or it doesn't trust you, right? Both ways. So you don't know how things will turn out means animal could act on account of things turning out this or that way. It can act either way, and that's what you feel. Not how circumstances will. Circumstances cannot cause you the anxiety, cannot cause you anything. That's exactly like, say, if you would have tamed your mind completely, that you have not a grain of doubt in your mind, that it cannot possibly bite you, even if somebody is stabbing it with spears, it will not bite you. then you have no fear in regard to circumstances, even if it's highway robbers chopping your limbs, because it never came from that. Let's take the example of what you said, somebody out of faith doing this rightly. What would they be doing rightly? Give me a few examples. So that the wild dog that's infinitely close cannot be anywhere else, cannot look at anything else except you and your behavior, so that dog can be tamed and eventually fully trusted, that it will not turn against you. What would they be doing out of faith rightly that would result in calming of the dog rightly? Start as broadly as you want.
You're not resisting any painful feeling, because as you're doing that, and I'm just thinking about the mind of friendliness. That's the mind of friendliness because of my non-resistance.
Let's start a bit broader. That's true, but that will come a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do first and foremost?
Well, restraint, keeping the precepts.
Not acting
not
out.
acting out. Not acting out. Like, when there's pressure, not acting out of that pressure.
Let's say
As
pressure for
as
unwholesome.
For unwholesome.
Because that makes
Which you
things
kind
worse.
of know. Like, you know when things are...
Yeah. Lying, cheating, stealing, killing, misbehavior, anger, bad speech. Things that are consciously, intentionally done that have no reason to be done, basically, except any kind of perverse pleasure you might be getting from it. So, restraining, keeping the precepts, setting up that container. Then you could, on a more immediate basis, like, okay, I will also pay attention to what I choose to look at, listen, talk about, even if it's within the precepts. Or it's not against the precepts, but I know here and now it's rooted in distraction or subtler lust or subtler aversion, so I will abstain from doing that. So out of faith, somebody can do all of that rightly. And then, then it would come down to the views that you hold.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to get rid of the pressure? Which sends the message to the animal, you hate it as much as it hates you.
Yeah.
Or maybe it didn't even hate you that much, but now it hates you because all you're doing is trying to kill it as far as it's concerned. You want to get rid of the pressure.
That's what I was kind of thinking was, just along a general answer to your question, was you would have to let yourself feel the anxiety of being with that dog, which means you'd have to kind of recognize it for what it is.
Well, you don't have to seek it very far. You just have to stop covering it up actively.
Right.
Like, it's not like you don't even need to uncover it. I got to make this work to dig it up. You just need to stop actively burying it, and it's going to be there,
But
one way or the other.
Yeah.
And that's exactly anxiety. The first thing that when people start keeping the precepts, giving up entertainment and so on, is just going to be that sense of anxiety and panic and vacuum internally. And it's like, well, there you go. You're already outlining your mind right there and then. So, but changing the views. Yeah. So not trying to get rid of the pressure, not learning how not to resist it, despite, the very strong habit here, but if I can only just get rid of this, just deal with this, then I'll be fine. It's like that basically sends the wrong communication to the animal. That is agitating it further, which means it's going to pressure you even further. So what else? So out of faith, you're keeping the precepts, sense restraint, you're not giving into the distraction, which becomes your virtual solitude. Solitude, i.e. between you and your mind. Nothing else being thrown in between to cover up. Not trying to get rid of the pressure. Not blaming other things for it. What
They're
else?
trying to kind of deal with other things
Yeah.
so as to not have
So
the
as to,
pressure.
so this doesn't come up yet. What else can a person be doing out of faith along the right lines? So body is restrained, speech is restrained, the views have been upgraded. There is the attitude of non-resistance in regard to the pressure. You're not just automatically trying to psychologize it, justify it, remove it, replace it. What else can you do out of faith there without needing to know a lot more? Well, like say you're doing all this right, so what else would be there that hasn't been really, that could be addressed a bit better now? Say it?
Thoughts.
Yes. Yes, the images. Exactly. You could like, okay, I do have a say in what I choose to revolve around. Like images present themselves. In the same sense, possibilities for physical actions or verbal actions present themselves, but then you choose to engage and revolve, feed and cultivate. So it's like, okay, so I will not then feed the unsuitable images that are rooted in lust or anger or cruelty, the Sutta say, or then later conceit, belonging to a clan and so on, the subtler ones. I just won't feed them. I will not give more momentum to them when they present themselves. I'm not blaming them for the problem. I am unresisting the pressure, but I could also not, just habitually not
Give them attention.
give them unsuitable attention, basically. Exactly.
Center stage.
Center stage, we said before, yeah. Don't allow them the center stage. Let them be there, but don't allow them the center stage. What else can you do then out of faith that can then tame the animal even further?
Presented with certain images.
Yeah, exactly. Start basically inducing certain context for it, because okay, it sees me. Well, let me think about these things of this kind, so that it will reflect back onto that animal.
Those perceptions, whatever perceptions.
Yeah, the perceptions of
anicca,
untamability, non-resistance. The perceptions of non-resistance that would then establish the animal in the state of metta, basically. As you said before, it's the animal that practices metta, not you. You're just setting it up for it. Mind you, it's the animal that practices samadhi, not you. Mm-hmm. It's citta is samadhi, it's not your thing that you're doing. So that's how you're unifying the animal as well. Yeah. Well, I'm doing the samadhi. No, you can only be setting it up rightly through the indirect means, through mindfulness, correctly, peripherally discerning stuff, so that then the animal is unified, elevated. What else could you do out of faith then? So present it with suitable contexts, right contemplations, on the basis of non-resistance, on the basis of virtual solitude, on the basis of uninterrupted virtue and restraint. What else can you do? Can you talk to it directly now? Since there is nothing else in between obscuring the communication. Can you tell it to calm down if it's agitated? You can. You always could. It's just that it didn't listen before. Because it wasn't taking it seriously enough. But now that you would have purified your body language, verbal language, mental language that this animal is reading, now it's just solely focused onto you. And now when you tell it, it actually hears you. And then you tell it to calm down. You tell it to relinquish. You tell it to let go. And it will. So is there anything else that the person of the faith would need to do?
I'd say not much. Well, it's like depends. I mean, we already said present it with certain contexts that would be on the level of like calming it further or unifying it. But then there's also, like you were saying, I think 1 or 2 talks ago, like presenting it with the wild elephant, you would sort of show it the spears or show it the things that like.
When would you do that? I don't think we specified that back then. So, like just now what we described, like this gradual training, when would you know to present the agitating context or possibly agitating context to see if there is agitation in the animal, or presented the non-agitating context? That what would be the criteria for that?
Well, let's say one obvious one is if it's agitated already, then you don't need to present it with more.
How do you know it's agitated already?
It must.
How are you measuring animals' agitation?
Suffering.
Suffering?
Acting out.
Acting out?
Pressure, being pressured.
Pressure?
Emotional outbursts.
No, this would be like
No
way too
coarse.
coarse now for this. All of those pretty much. Subtler than all of that. Well, it's kind of where the pressure is, but it's always some pressure, I suppose. It's not necessarily going to be what do you do in regard to pressure? What's the first thing you do in regard to pressure? What did you say you should stop doing?
Resistance.
Resist, yeah. So if there is resistance, if it's not sufficiently unresisted, then you shouldn't be agitating it, because you're just going to tighten the resistance. So that's why you first have to unresist the degree of perceived, felt, experienced resistance. Yeah.
I guess there has to be like also, I mean, like the other possible answer, I suppose, could be like when you know that now you can kind of talk to it directly, because there has to be kind of a degree of confidence that you can tell it to calm down. You show it something, it might start to get agitated, and it will.
You can calm it down. Yeah, that's why the importance of gradual training. Not like people just hearing the end parts of the gradual training and then just trying to apply that right now so I can get quicker there. It's like you have no criteria for whether the animal is being agitated or not. You're just throwing these things that can obviously make it worse. But see, the whole point is like it will constrict to some extent when you present it with things that it doesn't want to see. So you want to unconstrict it first, so that when it constricts back, it's just still on the neutral level. But if it's already constricted, there's some resistance there, presenting with more is just not going to be balanced. And that's why even when the Buddha was teaching first time people that would come, he would always talk first about benefits, of virtue, heavens, rebirth, great rewards, all of that, which kind of, oh wow, great. And it unconstricts more and more and more. And then he tells them about the peril, degradation of sensuality and so on, impermanence and all of that. So there's immediate constriction, but their starting point has been widened, so to speak. So when they constrict back, they're going to constrict onto the middle, not too narrow. Obviously, the Buddha could see that clearly in regard to the others, but you could safely know that if there is resistance, and now you're presenting these agitating context of impermanence, mindfulness of death, disgust and all of that to the mind, without unresisted at first, it's probably going to be rooted in resistance. You're trying to get rid of it by feeding it this to go away quicker, to stop doing it. So it's like you're trying to train a dog with frustration. You're still saying the same things, doing the same thing, but your attitude is frustrated. It's like, oh no, I gotta stop that first, defrustrate myself, unfrustrate myself, and then do the same things. And dog will get very different message in those two externally same looking examples. Now you could see then all those similes in the suttas when it says, okay, his work is done, training's completed, the elephant is completely immovable in the battle or non-battle, doesn't matter. So the wild dog is completely tame now, cannot possibly bite you under any circumstance. And you fully know that. Because you were presented with scenarios through the contemplation, the inevitabilities that used to cause agitation and threat and anxiety. But now it's none of that. It's simply immovable. And it looks at you with the same friendly eyes, so to speak. And you know it. And you know that. You know, like, you get a wild, crazy dog, you tame it, you train it, and it's like, you know, like, oh, that dog would give its life for me, basically. There's nothing that can come in between in that sense. Well, it's exactly the same for the mind, if it's tamed. So then, yeah, Arahant can literally go in any direction he pleases, towards any circumstances, and he will be completely unbothered, because the root of the bother was the animal that's now incapable of that. Incapable of craving.